Good. How about you?
Okay.
Good.
I think I got one.
Joel
Is
is.
this it? Oh, no. Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, right. Yes, I got it the wrong day.
This is
That's always been drawn to my very fun, but I would scream off all the time. But it was good. Yeah, great.
Okay.
Yeah, just doing my thing.
Yes, the company that we had before got acquired by a different company, so we are set. You're not launching in June. We're not launching in June.
I know it's so fast.
Yes, in August. Hopefully before school starts. But it should be seamless anyway. So even if it's after school starts, but I still have to build all the menus.
So exciting. Congratulations.
Ours currently right now at the very, very bottom. There's a
How many apartments do you get in and out of?
most websites it's done once unsubscribe.
Right. On a desktop, it's in that size margin.
Yeah.
So that was the worst experience.
Right.
Definitely something.
He wanted to do
We've had some people say this
Yes, it is.
not to be rude.
No.
People are
Well,
struggling.
I didn't build the site that we are currently using. It had nothing to do with that website.
Yeah.
And that is, the pages are all very similar. So in our new site, we'll have more options for creating like a board page that looks different from like the preschool registration page.
Pink didn't know what it was. This was
Always.
and we let it have biggest time right on our home landing. Right. Just everybody who's been advocating. It just seemed like it was more easier for people some of our older citizens that as Texas.
Well, and we have in our the new homepage is already laid out as far as design goes. So there'll be, I can add as many menus how to do images, but I think that might be tough. But what we went with were some pictograms in the middle. So especially on a mobile and you scroll and you have the pictograms because we have a lot of residents that are not. So and it should be more flexible too. So if people say, if I get a bunch of people that go, I don't know if it's so like Todd has already given me specific things he wants for his. I know Nicole has specific things for she wants for her area. And they've given me things to look at. So I'll look at the old tan sheet.
See, that's the problem. I'm just one voice that can't.
No, I mean it's always
it just seems to be very user friendly. It's just really sad. I would love to work with it.
skedaddles. Skedaddles. So
Yeah. That he does. So, but how's your son?
Good. It just got started. It's good.
I work here like recovering from COVID.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So our offices are intermingled with the allergy people, and they all thought they were having so it's coming off like and it's going into something not so nice. So and we all share the same way. So because I mean we all
Great. I'm glad you're feeling a little better.
yeah, I'm about 80% better. And I'm going to definitely get my second dose for sure.
Yeah, we got ours before. We traveled to family reunion with a bunch of people that never got anything.
Yeah, my husband didn't get any of that stuff.
So we got our fourth before we left.
Smart. Smart. You don't want it. I was telling Shannon, it's a great way to lose weight. I dropped 8 pounds or something. So I haven't seen him below 140 in 15 years. So she's like, you don't count that.
No, she doesn't. She's very good.
I used to be 112. My 20s. I was just
I saw that the next day on my bicycle.
Oh my gosh, what's going here?
It is 6 o'clock. Time for us to begin our regular meeting of the Valley High School Board of Education. This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business. It is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in agenda item 3. Laura, would you please call roll?
Mr. DeGroat?
Here.
Mrs. Eisner? Here. Mr. Skidmore?
Here.
Dr. Smith? Here. Mr. Red?
Here. Roman numeral 2, Pledge of Allegiance. Let's stand together. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 3A, public participation. I have a list of names. I will read them in the order that they were given. Beth Gensen.
I'm not sure. Do I get?
Don't touch it. You can stand there.
Okay. My name's Beth Genslinger, and I live at 123 East Market Street in Germantown. I'm here tonight as part of a group of parents and community members that are here to report our concerns with School Board President Timothy Rudd's recent use of social media to discuss school-related issues. These posts appeared on the Valley View Spartans Facebook page. I think it's like Germantown, Farmersville, Ohio, not affiliated with the school. On May 14th, May 23rd, May 25th, June 13th, and June 19th. Each post asks for community input on different issues. So each presenter here will respond to one topic discussed in these posts with the intent to share our common concerns about them. In numerous replies to respondents who offered ideas and opinions that he did not share, Mr. Rudd stated clearly what he would and would not support, and that he would reference the ideas shared in discussions regarding school policy making. We want to be clear he is not representing us and may be using this singular Facebook platform as an echo chamber. We share our concerns here because we all believe, as I'm sure you all do, that we want to build a stronger community by creating schools where we all feel welcomed, heard, and safe. And on a personal note, I'd just like to say that, when you use Facebook in that manner, it tends to cause a lot of drama, which I've found to be the truth. And you're only reaching a small number of people. It seems like there's a lot of people that are liking or commenting, but we're talking about, maybe 50 or 100 people. And when you're looking for ideas in a community where there's probably almost 10,000 people that the Valley View schools are representing, that little bit on Facebook really isn't getting a majority of the opinions. So I would recommend as a solution, if you want to get opinions from the community, do the coffee talks like the superintendent did. Go to Lions Club meetings, Rotary Club meetings, get involved with groups like the Valley View Community Drug-Free Coalition. go to sporting events and talk to people personally. Because I feel like on Facebook, sometimes your intent is not what comes out of it. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. Sarah Marcus.
Hi, my name is Sarah Marcus, and I live at 62 Lindell Drive in Germantown. Board President Rudd is using his position at Valley View to create an atmosphere of hate and bigotry by posting on social media. He posts on the Valley View Spartans Germantown and Farmersville Facebook page. Rudd is creating a platform for participants to argue publicly while pushing his own agenda. If Rudd truly wanted input, he would gather it using a reliable method. He is trying to divide us, not unite us. On May 17th, President Rudd posted a survey about politics in the classroom. He stated, and I quote, "My purpose is to get a sense of what the constituency I represent believes about political discussion in the classroom." And, quote, "As school board president, I will likely use this information along with my own personal convictions to promote policy that ensures that this is how political issues are discussed within Valley View schools." Without a clarification of what political discussion meant, that post led to discussion of gender identity and skin color and his personal beliefs. The post created division and hurt. This Facebook group is not representative of his constituents. On May 25th, President Rudd asked on Facebook for ideas on how to keep our schools safe. I shared ideas from Everytown for gun safety, and his response was, "Sarah Marcus, I've litigated against Everytown all over the country, currently on the other side of a case in Chicago, so I take literally everything they say with a grain of salt, but although the thought of it makes me feel like I might have to throw up a little, I'll check out the article tonight." Then later posted, "I'm a firearms attorney, a conservative, and an NRA life endowment member. So it shouldn't surprise you that I'm not irrationally afraid of firearms. If someone on here thought I might be a liberal or opposed to firearms, it certainly wasn't anything I've done that gave them that impression. Is that transparent enough for you?" On June 13, Rudd posted again asking for ideas for a new superintendent. An inappropriate comment led to Rudd's agenda. He writes, quote, "It is quite possible to affirm someone's personhood and humanity and be kind to them without denying biological reality, for instance, using proper names instead of pronouns. I will never support requiring Valley View staff or students to participate in untruth by calling boys girls and calling girls boys, and I will not support allowing such on a per-student basis without the consent of that student's parent or guardian. We can come up with solutions that do not require others to deny reality or participate in someone else's delusion." These words are disturbing, to say the least, and I am asking the other board members to consider the entire constituency when making decisions and policies that affect our future. The Valley View social media use policy states, "An employee's personal or private use of social media may have unintended consequences. While the board respects its employees' First Amendment rights, those rights do not include permission to post inflammatory comments that could compromise the district's mission, undermine staff relationships, or cause a substantial disruption to the school environment." While I understand that Mr. Rudd responded that he is speaking on social media as an individual, he doesn't have that luxury as the school board president. Just as teachers are required to follow the school's social media use policy outside of school, so should Mr. Rudd as the school's representative. I hope that you, Mrs. Smith, and Mr. Skidmore do not support these exclusive ideas presented by President Rudd, and that you understand the devastating effects these posts present. You all ran on the same ticket. Honestly, I voted for you, Mr. Skidmore, because I've always respected you as a teacher and felt you would never want to divide the district this way. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Kathy Young.
I have copies available if you'd like them. Am I doing this right? Okay. Hi, my name is Kathy Yawn. I live at 6174 Conservancy Road, and I'm here to discuss the post addressing school security that was sent out on May 25th. But first, I'd like to share briefly about myself. My husband was a graduate of the first Valley View class in 1969, and his son graduated in 1989. We moved here in 1995, and our two sons graduated in 2006 and 2009. I am also a longtime gun violence survivor. My family lost my youngest sister to suicide with a gun in 1988. My family was devastated. Our oldest son was 6 months old when she died, and he grew up watching us all grieve this tragic loss. He experienced emotional trauma that he didn't come to terms with until he was well into his teen years. Mr. Rudd's post asked community members to, quote, brainstorm ideas about how to make our schools safer in the event of an active shooter scenario in our schools. This post appeared the day after the shooting at Uvalde, Texas. Emotions were running extremely high, and I commented that the post was playing off these emotions and that the timing was poor. As a longtime gun violence survivor, I found the post upsetting, and I shared my survivor story in the comments. Mr. Rudd did convey condolences, but when I continued to share how triggering this post was, he failed to acknowledge that and replied, I'll continue to ask folks to participate as I have here. It is possible that others, possibly students, reading this could have felt like me, but did not feel safe in posting a public comment. Lengthy debate evolved around the issue of arming teachers and staff in schools, and Mr. Rudd responded minimally to those of us who were suggesting proactive ideas like staffing more mental health professionals, addressing bullying, and incorporating Sandy Hook Promises, See Something, Say Something programs. And you heard Sarah's response from Mr. Rudd when she shared the information from every town for gun safety. I found his response was both unprofessional and dismissive of an idea being shared in a post where he asked the community to, quote, put every idea out there. A bias against programs that do not recommend arming teachers or staff seemed apparent here. Since it's public knowledge that Mr. Rudd is employed as a legal representative for gun manufacturers, this post could reflect a possible conflict of interest. As a gun violence survivor, I freely admit my bias against putting more guns in the hands of very minimally trained individuals in extremely volatile situations. Mr. Rudd failed to do likewise. In May of this year, the CDC published a report stating that gun violence is now the #1 cause of death in children aged 1 to 19. So it is clear our community must address this issue, but we need to address this collaboratively and in an appropriate arena where all are invited to share ideas without fear of being attacked in a public platform. To Board Member Stephanie Smith, I suggest that as a professional working at Dayton Children's Hospital, you are very aware of the emotional impact on students of these divisive discussions, especially those focusing on gun violence in schools. Do you really want to have discussions like this continue? And I recently received a call from board member Mr. Skidmore, in which he stated his dislike of social media. I asked him and all the board members, now, do you truly want to monitor the daily use of social media by school staff, teachers, and leadership? I ask that board members and school leadership evaluate current policies on the use of social media and that unilateral use of this platform by school leadership or staff be addressed. I share these concerns in the hope that we can work together to make our schools both physically and emotionally as safe as possible. And I thank you all for your time and consideration.
Rachel Hulbert.
My name is Rachel Havermel. Until last month, my son was enrolled here at Valley View. We transferred him to a different school for several reasons, but one is that Valley View no longer feels like the welcoming and friendly place that it was to us. The infighting amongst adults and the intolerance towards people who think and look different has never been as apparent as it is now. Recently, several issues have been brought up by the Valley View Board of Education president on social media. One of the issues was thinly veiled as a poll on whether or not a teacher should discuss political subjects in the classroom. The discussion quickly spiraled to include social matters like Black Lives Matter and the LGBTQ+ community. Days after this incident, and mere hours after violence unfolded in Uvalde, Texas, Mr. Rudd started another discussion on arming the teachers who 1 week prior he was seeking to censor. Both of these discussions became hateful and intolerant towards anyone who believed differently. Last week, a reading list of LGBTQ+ friendly books that was created by Valley View students was published on Facebook. The list once again opened a floodgate of hateful rhetoric where adults said the children who made the list had a serious mental health illness. I'm quoting that exactly. The books on this list are equivalent of Judy Blume and other teen-focused series such as Harry Potter. Mr. Rudd made a comment on that thread that was very alarming, which was, quote, "You might not agree with my tactics or my timetable, but I'm not looking for your agreement or your approval. I have a long track record of accomplishing what I set out to accomplish. I won't be asking too many people for pointers." I question, what is he seeking to accomplish? Because it's not apparent. It is troubling that Mr. Rudd chose to partake in these discussions, yet failed to acknowledge the parents who have spoke out about their kids struggling with issues such as bullying and substance abuse. I experienced this firsthand when I launched a campaign to bring awareness to the vaping crisis in this district. I often spoke in the very same Facebook group that Mr. Rudd is an active participant in, and the only Valley View Board of Education member to reach out and offer help was Mrs. Iser. Mrs. Iser took time from her beautiful wife and family to offer help. I recently spoke to someone with a family member who is a high school student at Valley View. He's also a football player and is addicted to vaping. He has become so dependent on it that he vomits between quarters from withdrawal. These kids use vapeless and vapor-free devices openly in class at Valley View because they are easy to hide from teachers. In spite of this, there has been no formal nicotine testing policy set by the district. No one here is trying to censor or detract from the management of the district in a transparent manner. Our children are watching you browbeat others into sharing your viewpoints. I suggest that the board remedy the actual harmful threats that are lurking in this district, the threats to our children from teaching them intolerance and bullying. These threats are intertwined with the rise in substance abuse and black market vapes that are being sold to Valley View kids by Valley View kids. These issues are here and will continue to harm our kids unless the board takes swift action. I implore you to focus on these real issues rather than creating unnecessary policies for perceived threats that simply do not exist. I will be emailing you guys information on the vaping community that I set up for Valley View parents. I no longer have a Valley View student, so I'll be turning that over to whomever wants to take it, and whatever resources I have on vaping.
Thank you. Mandy Dennis.
Hello, I'm Mandy Dennis Meyer. I'm a Trevor Project advocate, and I'm here to discuss my concerns about the behaviors of Mr. Rudd on the Valley View Facebook page and how it could affect the Valley View youth. I have lived in this community for 4 years. Prior to moving here, I was warned by others in this community that my open-minded children would not be welcomed here. Due to these concerns, some parents and myself have always chosen to homeschool our children in this district. Mr. Rudd engaged in a comment on July 14th, where someone mentions the board should hire a superintendent that can, quote, define what a woman is. To which Mr. Rudd subtly jokes, quote, "So like a biologist then." When other community members pushed this conversation further, Mr. Rudd claimed on July 16th he, quote, "would not support Valley View staff or students to participate in the untruth by calling boys girls and girls boys." He also states, quote, "we can come up with solutions that do not require others to deny reality or participate in someone else's delusion." Mr. Rudd tells a former student, also on July 16th, he would not use their preferred pronouns but would call them by their name instead because the pronoun choices were not true in his opinion. According to the Trevor Project, the world's largest suicide prevention organization for LGBTQ, 1.8 million LGBTQ youth considered suicide last year. One attempts suicide every 45 seconds because of the lack of gender-affirming spaces. They are at higher risk of suicide due to how they are mistreated in society, not because of mental illness. Due to these safety concerns for our youth, Facebook is not an appropriate platform to gather information and can be dangerous. Mr. Rudd's interactions are being judged by some students and people in this community as discriminatory. It took the student council president explaining that there is a larger fraction of the school that we may think that is queer to make the community's hateful remarks finally stop. After speaking to Mr. Rudd privately, I believe Valley View leadership is not offering an environment that I would consider for my children or others. I'm not sure Mr. Rudd genuinely cares that his actions are hurtful or understands the potential consequences of them. I would not feel safe sending my children to this school or suggesting this district for others, where even the school board president puts his bias over the well-being of the students. In closing, I hope that you, Mrs. Smith, and Mr. Skidmore do not support the actions of Mr. Rudd, which can make our LGBTQ youth suffer, and instead want to create a safe space where all our students are celebrated. If you would like more information on the Trevor Project, please reach out to me. I look forward to speaking to everyone in the future. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Laura Boyd. I have had 36 years in the field of education. 30 of those were at the high school level in a classroom, and 19 of those were here at Valley View High School in the classroom. And hi to all of you if I have your children, you, or whomever. I think we can all agree that businesses and higher education institutions want our students to have higher level thinking skills and problem solving skills. I also think we can agree that our children and our students need to have a comprehensive background using these skills and to learn how to discuss topics in a classroom when we all do not agree. I would also hope we all agree that teachers and administrators are highly trained to teach the subject matter in Ohio State curriculum. I received a message from a former Valley View student. She is now a teacher and lives in another school district, with a screenshot of one of Mr. Rudd's Facebook questions. Mr. Rudd asked a broad question about community sentiment and politics in the classroom. The conversation led me to wonder, how do I define what constitutes a political discussion? Using Ohio's model curriculum for financial literacy, I would like to give you an example of how complicated this question is. I have been licensed to teach this course, financial literacy, since 1978. I have taught this course many times, and while the topic might not seem political at first glance, it and many other courses has the potential to lead the conversations that could be deemed political. Here's an example from the Ohio Department of Education Financial Literacy Curriculum, which, by the way, for freshmen starting next year will be a required semester class in every high school. The topic under income is government payments. People and students have differing opinions as to government subsidies and supports. Would a discussion involving any of these be deemed a political issue? Does the teacher, if a student brings something up that would be deemed political, shut down the discussion at that point? Students then may stop speaking in discussions or in collaborative groups because they feel their thoughts have no validity. We and businesses want students to be able to work collaboratively with others who may have different opinions. How are students supposed to learn these skills if topics within the state curriculum are deemed political? I have some questions for all the board members. What is your definition of political? Who decides what is a political or a social issue? Who will monitor and determine if a teacher is bringing politics into the classroom? As Board of Education members, excuse me, I would hope you have a deliberate, intentional discussion regarding politics in the classroom and all of the implications, putting any such board policy in place at Valley View. As BOE members, I hope you have a detailed discussion of the use of Facebook and other social media sites by BOE members to solicit opinions. Do you, as Board of Education members, really want to be the monitors of what is happening each day and each hour in our classrooms? Trust your teachers and administrators. We have excellent teachers and administrators at Valley View who teach from our state mandated curriculums. Lastly, I would ask any community members who have concerns with postings such as the one I have discussed to contact school board members with their concerns. Thank you.
Roman numeral 3B, legislative liaison report. Spencer mentioned in the last meeting that we have not had one of these, and we haven't. So there's a substantial number of things to report on. I'm going to talk about 3 bills today because they have passed and have a direct impact on what we do as a district. And then I'm going to turn your attention to some things that are on the horizon that may have an impact on what we do. And so, obviously, I think we're all aware of House Bill 126. House Bill 126 has impacted the means by which legislative bodies, and the Board of Education is within the definition of that, are able to initiate challenges to property valuations. The largest issue is that there are financial thresholds that will impact whether or not the board wants to initiate a valuation question. And just as important as that, we will have to do it by formal resolution. We can't just do it of our own initiative. We will have to do it with notice to the property owner. And so it is a procedural matter in that regard. It is a substantive matter in a few others. But it's not a particularly long bill. The full text of it runs right at about 20 pages. Pretty. It's not an exciting read, but it's not a hard one either. House Bill 40 is one that we're going to want to keep an eye on. It's passed. House Bill 140. It has passed. It will place certain costs on any district and any organization, legislative body that wants to put a levy on the ballot. And so there will be requirements that the county auditor provide house-specific information in terms of what the actual cost will be to the individual property owners. And House Bill 140 will then shift the cost of that from the auditor to the district. So that'll be something to take into consideration before we put anything else on the ballot in the future. House Bill 99 obviously has been in the news. It does a number of things. It's a little bit longer to read. I think it was 37 pages. Highlighted some of the highlights. Essentially, what it does is it is the legislature's response to Madison Township litigation with every town, and essentially the Supreme Court of Ohio said that you had to have more or less the same requirements in firearms training as police officers in order for a district to allow anyone to be armed on premises. The legislature reacted to that and passed Senate Bill 99. It goes into effect, I want to say in September. It does a number of things. One, it removes from the definition of public record the information concerning who's certified within the district. So it would allow the district, if any district chose to exercise their rights under this provision, to keep that information private. What else it does is it creates a new division within the Ohio state government, within the Department of Public Safety, called the Ohio Mobile Training Team. with the Chief Mobile Training Officer. And if you wanted to pull the bill, which you can get online from the legislature's website, pages 33 through 35, everything that's underlined there is all new language within that particular code provision. And so the changes to 5502.7 will set up the means by which the state of Ohio oversees training on those issues. Lastly, I wanted to bring up, and there are a number of bills that are currently pending, but pending bills are, as we know, nothing. And so until they become something, they're nothing. But just to know that they're on the horizon, there was a bill, House Bill 151, that was put forward by Don Jones out of Freeport, would revise the Ohio Resident Educator Program. It was on the floor for a House vote. It was amended on the floor to include provisions of House Bill 61, which would enact portions of what was known as the Save Women's Sports Act, which would separate by sex sports within the state of Ohio. So that might be something that we are going to have dealt with at a state level that will affect our athletic programs potentially in the future. So that's all I have for what legislative is report. Roman numeral 4, approval of minutes. We have the regular board meeting of May 9, special board meetings of May 16, June 2nd, and June 22nd. I don't know whether that was Valerie or Lori or Laura that pulled all this together, but thank you for keeping track of when those were, because it's important to us. You've all got a chance to look at the minutes as put forward. Would like to have someone make a motion that we approve the minutes as they are or as amended. If there's need for amendment. So moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? What would you call the roll?
Mr. DeGrove?
Yes.
Dr. Smith? Yes. Mrs. Iser?
Yes.
Mr. Skidmore? Yes. Mr. Rudd?
Yes. Roman numeral 5A, recommend the board approve the financial statements for the month ending in May 31st, 2022. We've had copies of those in our board packets. Laura, would you like to speak to those?
Sure, and I'll speak to several of these this evening. It feels like a really long time ago since we met because our meeting is later this month. But if you remember back at the May board meeting, Valerie did an awesome job of presenting kind of where we were at in terms of the 5-year forecast that she then approved at that meeting. So really nothing more to add. Today we're running ahead on our revenue and we're almost right on our expenses in terms of what we had budgeted. We are 2 days away from the end of the fiscal year, so in July we'll be able to report the full year numbers for you. So beyond that, unless you have questions, that's all I have for letter A.
Questions? Someone like to make a motion that we approve the May 31st report statement or financial statement? So moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Would you call the roll?
Mr. DeGrove?
Yes.
Mrs. Iser?
Yes.
Mr. Skidmore?
Yes.
Dr. Smith? Yes. Mr. Rudd?
Yes. Roman numeral 5B, recommend the board approve the final certificate of estimated resources for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2022. Would you like to speak to that, Laura?
I would. So 3 of you have not seen this yet on any of our agendas since you're new to the board since January. We file what is called an original certificate of estimated resources either in July or August at the beginning of the year, and then a final certificate I ask for your approval in June. These are requirements for audit purposes, so for audit compliance, and also a report that has to be filed with the county auditor. In the report itself is exactly the title of it. We're estimating our revenue for the year. And this is not just for the general fund, this is for all of our funds. And so that's the report in a nutshell.
All right. Someone like to make a motion that we approve the final certificate of estimated resources for fiscal year ending June 30, 2022. So moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. DeGrove?
Yes.
Dr. Smith? Yes. Mrs. Iser? Yes. Mr. Skidmore?
Yes.
Mr. Rudd?
Yes. Roman numeral 5C, recommend the board approve the final appropriations for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2022. What would you like to see that?
Yes, and this one is related to letter B. I'll explain that to you in just a minute. But the final appropriations is the same thing as kind of discussion as what we had in letter B. We approve our initial appropriations at the beginning of the year. These are our final appropriations for the year. Things move and change throughout the year. Sometimes our grant applications change, sometimes we get a new grant that maybe we weren't expecting. And so that's why we do this multiple times throughout the year. The certificate of estimated resources, which you just approved in letter B, must either be equal to or exceed the appropriations, and they do. And again, that's a compliance piece for audit. And so this is also filed with the county auditor, and this meets all of our requirements for the year.
All right, we've all had a chance to look at these in our board package. Do I have a motion that we approve the final appropriations for fiscal year ending June 30, 2022? Second. Second, please call the roll.
Mrs. Iser? Yes. Mr. DeGrove?
Yes.
Mr. Skidmore? Yes. Dr. Smith? Yes. Mr. Rudd?
Yes, Roman numeral 5D, recommend the board approve the initial appropriations for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2023. Laura?
Yes, to start spending any money for the year, for the new fiscal year, the board has to say that it's okay to do that. And so that's exactly what this is. So I mentioned to you that in 22, we had initial appropriations that were filed. That's what this is for a new year starting July 1st. And so this appropriation approval has to be in place for us to do anything on July 1st in terms of spending money in the district.
All right, do we have a motion that we approve the initial appropriations for fiscal year ending June 30, 2023? Second? Any discussion? Laura?
Dr. Smith? Yes. Mr. Skidmore? Yes. Mr. DeGrove?
Yes.
Mrs. Iser? Yes. Mr. Rudd?
Yes. Roman numeral 5E, we have another then and now certification, which the board has had one, so unless anybody really wants to know, we need another explanation. The amount required to meet this obligation was in the treasury. We're in the process of collection. Gordon Food Service, May 16, 2022 for $17,220.82. Laura, you need to say anything to us about that?
Not unless there's questions.
Any questions? Someone like to make a motion that we approve the then and now certification? Do we have a second? Second. Laura, would you call the roll?
Mrs. Iser? Yes. Mr. DeGrove?
Yes.
Mr. Skidmore? Yes. Dr. Smith? Yes. Mr. Rudd?
Yes, Roman numeral 5F, recommend the board approve a donation from the Germantown Lions Club to Valley View Local Schools in the amount of $10,000 for Nice Auger Stadium improvements. So moved. Got a motion, do we have a second? Any discussion? Other than that, I'd like to say thank you to the Lions Club. It's very much appreciated. Looking forward to that. Any other discussion? Laura, would you call the roll?
Mr. DeGrove?
Yes.
Mrs. Iser? Yes. Mr. Skidmore? Yes. Dr. Smith? Yes. Mr. Rudd?
Yes. Roman numeral 5G, recommend the board approve a donation from the Germantown Lions Club to the STEM instructor, Erica Ham, for the K-6 program startup cost in the amount of $500. I'll make a motion to that effect. Second. We got a motion and a second. Any discussion other than to say thanks again to the Lions Club? Laura, would you call the roll?
Dr. Smith? Yes. Mr. DeGrove?
Yes.
Mrs. Iser? Yes. Mr. Skidmore? Yes. Mr. Rudd?
Yes. Roman numeral 6A, new business. Recommend the board approve contracts to employ Joe Scholler Sr. as superintendent per the attached resolution. I'll speak to this if you don't mind. You all can't see the resolution. Essentially, the vote will be to approve a bridge contract that has Mr. Scholler as interim beginning tomorrow, although he's been working, beginning tomorrow through the end of July, because we already will have a superintendent in place. Ben is still technically our superintendent, but on vacation for the next couple of weeks. And so that bridge contract would take Mr. Scholler until the end of July. And then we have a 1 full year contract for August 1st to July 31st, 2022. So you all have context of what we're doing here. Would someone like to make a motion that we approve the contracts as per our resolution? Second. Second. Any discussion? Before I vote, I'll just say I'm really happy. I think your experience speaks for itself. I think it's important that the community know that Mr. Scholler has worked with OFCC on 2 projects before as superintendent. He oversaw the building of the school facilities at Canham and at Mississauga Valley. He is well known to the community. I have not heard anything but positive feedback from teachers and staff who have thought to share their thoughts on Mr. Sheldon with me, so it will be my pleasure. Any other discussion? Would we have a motion and a second? Would you call the roll?
Mrs. Iser?
Yes.
Mr. DeGrove?
Yes.
Mr. Skidmore?
Yes.
Dr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Rudd?
Yes. Roman numeral 6B, personnel. Approved personnel is recommended, attachment number 3. You've all had a chance to look at the attachment. Someone like to make a motion that we approve it as.
I'd like to separate Jason Reed's contract and Josh Gibbs' contract out as volunteer.
Okay.
Will that be two separate votes?
Okay. So we are now voting on approving the personnel as recommended in attachment 3 minus the 2 individuals raised by Ms. Iser. Mrs. Iser.
Thank you.
Do we have discussion on the motion as amended? Please call the roll.
We don't have a motion.
A motion?
I need a motion.
Oh, would someone like to make a motion that we put forward that we approve the personnel as recommended with the amendment made by Spencer?
I'll make a motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Dr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Skidmore?
Yes.
Mr. DeGrove?
Yes.
Mrs. Iser? Yes.
Yes.
And Mr. Rudd?
Yes. That leaves for us the 2 remaining individuals that were put forth in what was recommended to us in attachment number 3, Jason Reed and Josh Gibbs. I would like to make a motion that we approve Jason Reed and Josh Gibbs for the positions for which they were put forward in the attachment number 3. Someone like to second that?
Yes, I still have a question. Are we voting, you're making this one vote?
I'm making one vote for 2 candidates. That's how I'm moving forward as a motion.
I don't have problems with this. I'll second.
Any discussion? Would you please call the roll?
Mr. Rudd?
Yes.
Mr. Skidmore?
Yes.
Mr. DeGrove?
No.
Mrs. Iser?
No.
Dr. Smith?
Yes.
Roman numeral 6C, recommend the board approve the service agreement between the Miami Valley Educational Computer Association Regional Council of Governments in VECA and the Valley View Local School District for the period of July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2023. And I was confused when I first saw this, and I think you were too, Laura, during our meeting. At first we were in ESC and we already done with it. This is not that. And so I'm glad to know that I've been confused. Would someone like to make a motion that we approve this service agreement that's in the board packet?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Iser?
Yes.
Dr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. DeGrove?
Yes.
Mr. Skidmore?
Yes.
Mr. Rudd?
Yes. Roman numeral 6D, recommend the board approve the service agreement between Fidelity Healthcare and its program, Premier Community Health, PCH, and Valley View Local Schools for a period of August 1st, 2022 to June 1st, 2023. I just want, before we make a motion on that, is that accurate? That's a 10-month contract? Is that how we, just a school year contract?
School year.
Okay. Laura, you want to explain to us what this is in general?
I'm going to defer and ask Kevin to.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Yes, I was told Kevin would have information.
Premier Health is our company that we use to provide nursing for our district. So that currently supplies us 2 nurses, one here at one at the primary and intermediate campus, and then another at the junior high and high school. And then other things added in, but the majority of it is that role
we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Laura, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Eisner?
Yes.
Dr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. DeGrove?
Yes.
Mr. Skidmore?
Yes.
Mr. Rudd?
Yes. Roman numeral 6E, recommend the board approve the memorandum of understanding between Valley View Local School District Board of Education and the Valley View Teachers Association regarding amendments to supplemental salary position available to association members. Board copies were enclosed for us. Everyone's had a chance to look at the MOU. Someone want to make a motion that we approve the MOU as it was presented to us? We have a second.
Second.
Any discussion? Laura, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Eisner?
Yes.
Mr. Skidmore?
Yes.
Mr. DeGrove?
Yes.
Dr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Rudd?
Yes. Roman numeral 6F, recommend the board approve the employee district handbook. Someone like to make a motion to that effect?
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
Any discussion? Laura, would you call the roll?
Mrs. Eisner?
Yes.
Mr. DeGrove?
Yes.
Mr. Skidmore?
Yes.
Dr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Rudd?
Yes. Roman numeral 7, superintendent's comments. And I know you don't technically start till tomorrow, but you've been working a lot anyway, so I think you should feel free to avail yourself of this.
Well, I just want to say thank you for the board. I think we have a long ways to go, and I've been working with some great people. You've got great people here, and it's going to be exciting. And I'm just looking forward to getting the building going and get some dirt moved out there, and so we can get into the brand new building as soon as possible.
Thank you. Board member comments. Dan.
I'd like to recommend that Ms. Smith take over as board president after the disturbing post on Facebook, and it's kind of unacceptable as a president to air your own opinions, and act in the way that you did on social media. So I would like to move that Ms. Smith take over for
You
you.
want to put that on the agenda right now?
I second.
I'm fine with putting the agenda. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I think it's not very professional for you airing your personal views on and putting it on the community, and for that reason, I think you're not bringing us together, you're dividing us more, and I think it's wise for Stephanie to take over.
Any other discussion? I was going to say this for my comments, but I'll deal with it now. First of all, I will not respond to anyone's characterizations of my words. Call them what you will. They're my words. They are out in the public. You can read them. If you read them and you read something into them that's not there, that's your problem. That's not my problem. I'm not going to defend my words against someone else's characterization. What I will do is say that they will stay, that anyone can see what I asked. The first question that I asked was based upon something that had come to me that was a concern to a parent about the potentiality of political speech in the classroom. I asked the question, what are your thoughts on political speech? I gave two non-contradictory answers and two that weren't compatible with the others that I thought were fairly reasoned and reasonable. I asked, one of the options was, a student should not know their teacher's political viewpoint on an issue. A couple hundred people checked that. The one that said, it's fine for students to know their teacher's political viewpoint on an issue. Like 5 checked that. Another option was, political discussion is acceptable in a classroom consistent with the curriculum as long as it is viewpoint neutral in the manner in which it's led. A couple hundred people said, yeah, that sounds reasonable to me. So I don't understand. I pointed out at the beginning that it was not a scientific poll. Why do I say that? Well, because my background is in statistics. I know, I understand. If I were doing research to be predictive in nature, I'd put in all kinds of controls. I would do things a lot differently. But when I want to get a feel for what do people think, even with the margins of error in that level of a poll, it was pretty clear that people would just rather not have the schools be a place where their kids are being pontificated to. I'm not saying it's a widespread problem, but it has the potential of being a problem. The people said what they said. The problem wasn't so much at first with me asking the question until the answer was so overwhelmingly one-sided, and then it became, how dare you even ask? Let me tell you why I dare ask. Because there are 5 people in this room. Count them on your hand. There are 5 people who are tasked with caring what the public thinks. 5. And they're right here on this dais. Those 5 people have to make policy decisions. Why? Because policy decisions have to be made. They have to be made here. And so, when we come here, we don't come in a vacuum. Ben might read an article. We're not going to castigate him because he didn't read every article. Spencer might read a book. We're not going to say Spencer should have read every book. I might have a neighbor come talk to me. I'm not going to say, holy smokes, now I have an obligation to knock on every door in this community. I might have someone call me. What I have in that particular forum is 5,000 people who either have or claim a connection to this community. Someone said you should go to a Lions Club meeting. Why, so I can talk to 30? Why can't I ask a question? The problem seems to be that you don't like other people's answers. Other people, I don't care how dumb you think their answer might be, it's their answer. You can take it, you can leave it. The nature of communication, it's not that we get triggered and then say we can't have this conversation. At some point the conversation needs to be had on any number of issues. And to assuage the concerns of some in the community, there's not going to ever be a policy issue that's addressed in this forum that isn't first put out there that it's going to be addressed. And our current policies require it to be done at 2 different meetings unless there's an emergency or some other basis for it. So please don't claim, because people have claimed this, that stakeholders are being left out. They're not. It's simply not accurate. So that was my first offending question, was, what are your thoughts on politics in the classroom? I think I got a pretty good read on what this community thinks on whether or not there ought to be teachers in a position of sharing their particular political views. Now, is there going to be hard work of deciding, well, what's political and what's not? Somebody at some point is going to have to address that. And that somebody and at some point will be the board. That's how that works. But to suggest that because I've only put it out where these 5,000 people might see it and have a chance to respond, and if you don't like my options, have a chance to add another poll response, I'm not buying it. The second offending question was genuinely, let's brainstorm, how can we make our schools safer? You really want your board walking into a board meeting to consider an issue, having not thought about it beforehand? So you know, if you want to go look, because it's still there on the internet and you can, of the 5 topics that I said ought to be the general areas that people might want to speak about, the first 4 had nothing to do with bringing a affirmative presence into the school that might attack an issue. That 5th option could include everything from resource officers to teachers, because the legislature said we can. I didn't advocate for that at all. I let people do their own talking. But at the end of the day, you should want your school board asking the community what they think about security in their schools, because they're their kids. The third offending question, here it comes. This is the battle. What should we be looking for in a superintendent? Got a ton of great answers. One answer that a lot of people didn't like. A lot of people did like it. Interestingly, more people liked that answer than some of the other answers. It is not my role, and it is not your role. It is not anyone's role to tell this community that they don't have the right to share their opinion. Someone called it an echo chamber. Go read it. If you think that's what an echo chamber looks like, because the most vocal people on there If you want to count likes, I'm probably winning. If you want to count people who are mad at me and unhappy that I even want to have the audacity to want to have the conversation, there's a lot of folks there. That ain't an echo chamber. That's people feeling free to share their thoughts, just like everybody else, except you don't have to get triggered by it. Let people share their thoughts. Ultimately, and this board will do what they want. The board doesn't want me to still be the president. We'll find out here in a little bit. Someone suggested that perhaps that we should adopt a policy. There is not a board that has the authority to adopt a policy that dictates when its individual board members can engage the public that they are accountable to as elected officials. There's not. And there shouldn't be. When it's all said and done, one of the reasons why I'm here, one of the reasons why I will stay here, is because there is a massive segment of this community that doesn't think they are listened to in any regard. I create a place to listen. I don't see the offense in that. I don't have to approve everything anybody says. Lots of people say things on there that I think are ridiculous on both sides. But I'm not going to stop. And the reason I'm not going to stop is because the people in this community ought to know that the people that they elect are accessible, they're open. Some people don't like my personal opinions, which, by the way, if you read the conversations, for the most part, I leave mine out. But we don't come here and avoid, we don't come here in a vacuum. I am who I am. Everybody else on this board is who they are. And I personally think the world's better when people are open about who they are and what they think and what their opinions are. Because it seems like a lot gets done and a lot has gotten done over the last so many years without much discussion. Stuff just happens. Where's the debate? Where are the viewpoints? Where are the pros? Where are the cons? At the end of the day, you're going to know where I stand. And you might not like it. And I'm going to know where other people on the board stand, and I might not like that. That's how the board works. And in 3 years, you decide whether you like me on the board or not. And I'm okay with that. That's how it's supposed to go. And so my thoughts are, I'm happy to serve as the board president. I like serving as the board president. I think that I do an effective job as the board president. I think more people are glad that there are discussions than there are that are upset. I think we have a very vocal minority. And so that's my comments. And I have very little else to say, although I could go on. Any other discussion? The motion is on the table to appoint Stephanie as president. Stephanie, you have the right and the ability to decline a nomination.
Well, I think more importantly, what needs to happen now is a discussion about we as a board, how we feel about communicating with the district. And there are some that are concerned that Facebook is maybe not the platform that should happen. And quite frankly, there are people who are not on social media, but there's also people who aren't getting the Germantown Press. There are people who don't do email. You send out paper surveys. At best, you may get a 30% response rate. How is the best way to reach out to everyone? And I do believe that everybody should have a voice. And just going to put out there something very personal here. My stepson is gay. My sister-in-law is gay. I have multiple friends and multiple colleagues I work with who are gay or in that community. I love them, I respect them. I am not a divisive person. However, sitting here as a board member, it is very tough when you have to make decisions for the majority of your community. Sometimes you are going to be in direct opposition of what you feel personally, but you have to listen to your constituents. And I really try to take this role as a school board member very, very seriously. I definitely know firsthand all about gun violence. In my role as a neurosurgery nurse practitioner, I hold children in my arms who have been shot. Often. Too often. Okay? I will say it's not the gun that did it, it's the person behind the gun. And We do have some serious mental health issues going on. We have some serious bullying in this community. And to Mr. Rudd's approach on reaching out to people, he has a right to ask people their thoughts. He does not represent Bob Skidmore or myself. We have our own voice. We're very strong people. We have our own convictions, and we think our own way. But I think just to, in my opinion, just to say, Mr. Rudd, we don't want you as president anymore, that doesn't really address the issue at hand. It just becomes yet another divisive thing. And I think that as a board, we need to get together and really determine, how do we get tough questions answered by our community without being divisive. And, like it or not, social media, a lot of information gets portrayed there. Now, vetting it out whether or not it's accurate information or representative is yet another situation. But the bottom line is it is one way, should not be the only way to gather information. I know I would never make a board decision based on a survey on social media alone. I would not. Absolutely not. But I don't think it's the right decision to have Mr. Rudd be removed from his position as president because he sought to try to get community's feedback. I think maybe we need to look at moving forward how we go about getting that feedback. And I think that's where I stand with it.
Motion's been made and second. Can we take a roll call?
We need to go through twice on comments. I have a, Bob, would you like to speak?
I'd just like to say, I think Stephanie said most of what I would like to say, but just to say it, I have my own beliefs. I listen to people myself. I don't do social media on purpose because I don't want to deal with the situations that seem to always come up when that becomes an issue. I did talk to some of the people involved. They had some good ideas about maybe other ways we could get information other than social media, and I'd like to discuss that with the board at some time. But I also believe that Mr. Rudd has been doing a good job as president, and I don't think that this is the time that we need to change that, but I really do believe we need to find other ways to gather information.
Along those lines, nothing would make me happier than if the board worked together to be proactive to gather as much community input as we can. I think that's a great idea. I would suggest, I would ask that if you form an opinion on any of these issues without having read everything, every word, every response, it's easy to say, well, this person said this, or this person said that. Look at the context. Look what's said. There was a quote, and I do want to clarify because I don't think that this is not political nonsense. It's not. It's easy to talk in 30,000-foot platitudes. It's when you get into the specifics of policy that it becomes, that's where rubber meets the road. It stops being so easy. And where the most recent conversation went down a course, and it went into transgender issues. I don't know if you followed it, but there's a school district down in Virginia that just suspended a boy, because he would not use a pronoun he did not believe to be consistent with the truth. And so I asked the question, and I asked it in a group that included a former value teacher. And the question was, what does the board do? What should happen when a teacher or a student says it's inconsistent with my beliefs? I don't want to participate in this. That's a real question. Do we suspend him? I don't know the answer. That's a board question. That's a board question we have to decide. But it's so easy to talk 30,000 foot. The details are where the work has to be done. And you can't work on the details until you've thought about the 30,000 foot and everything in between. This is not some political exercise. At some point, somebody on this board is going to have to provide guidance. I'm not aware of it being a problem in Germantown right now, in Valley View. It's not on my agenda. It's not on the policy committee's agenda as it was raised. But a bunch of parents wanted to talk about it. So I ask that everyone read every word if you're going to form an opinion on this. Otherwise, what's your opinion? It becomes nothing at that point. Any other discussion? Laura, would you call the roll on the motion to replace me as president with Stephanie Smith?
Mr. DeGrove?
Yes.
Mrs. Iser?
Yes.
Mr. Skidmore?
No.
Dr. Smith?
No.
Mr. Rudd?
No. Roman numeral 8, board member comments. Wait, no, we're already there. Yep. That was Ben's comment. Stephanie.
I just want to thank everybody for their comments. You are being heard, and I appreciate the time that it took for you to come in and to talk. And for those of you that were willing to stay to hear our responses, even more so. And want you to know that we truly, as a board, are trying to make the best decisions for this school district. We've had an unsurmountable amount of change that most school districts do not see, such as we've been through, hiring coaches and superintendents, treasurers, and building a new school. And there have been a few people who thanked us, but we want to thank you too for your concern enough to come to this board meeting and support us, or let us know if you feel that there's things that we can be doing differently. Thank you.
I just want to thank everybody who came to speak tonight, and anybody that was impacted by those social media statements. Mr. Rudd does not speak for me. He does not speak for this Board of Education. I do not share his views, and I find them unnecessary and unprofessional. I was born and raised in this community, and my wife and I have chosen to raise our 6 African American children in this community because of the teachers in this district and because of the community that helped raise me. And Mr. Rudd is not representative of that community that I know, and for that I'm terribly sorry that any of you have experienced that, and I'm terribly sorry that the 2 other board members that ran unopposed on his same ticket don't realize that. All I can do is encourage you all to stay involved and encourage you to run for the Board of Education when the time comes. But thank you very much for being here, and we will do everything we can to continue to support you.
I'd just like to thank Mr. Shaw for accepting the position. I think he's the right person at the right time. It's great to have someone who knows the community and is experienced. I think he'll do a great job.
I don't have too much more to say. Everyone has touched on something important. I will echo that I'm very excited about Mr. Shaw. I think his experience carries a lot of weight. I think there has been a leadership vacuum, and I don't think there will be on Mr. Shaw's watch. And I think that's essential. And I can tell you that I have utmost confidence that I can believe every word out of his mouth. And that what he says he will do, he will do. That what he says he won't do, he won't do. And I'm looking forward to working with you. We have executive session. All right. We need to go into executive session to discuss employment and compensation of personnel. There will be no additional business taken after this. And so, unless you just want to stick around and watch us adjourn, which is very exciting, thank you all for coming. Someone like to make a motion to go into executive session to discuss employment and compensation of personnel. have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Call roll, please.
Mrs. Isaac? Yes. Dr. Smith? Yes. Mr. DeGrove?
Yes.
Mr. Skidmore? Yes. Mr. Rudd?
Yes. Thank you.